The city had a way of swallowing people whole, especially ones like Darius Locke. He moved through the streets like a shadow, the kind of man who noticed everything and said nothing. A former federal prosecutor turned ghost operative, Darius had spent years dismantling corruption from the inside. But tonight, the system was about to learn a hard lesson. It started with two crooked cops and a diner coffee. Detectives Grayson and Holloway had a routine: find a black man who looked out of place, plant evidence, and collect their cut from the drug ring they protected. But when they cuffed Darius, they didn't just arrest the wrong man, they signed their own death warrant. Because Darius wasn't just innocent, he was the storm. And by sunrise, their careers would be ash. Their dirty secrets would light up every screen in the city. And the real kingpin would learn some shadows fight back. This isn't a story about an arrest. It's about a reckoning. Turn the page, if you dare. Let us know where you are watching from and what time you found this video. We read every single comment and subscribe for more inspiring content. Mitch Grayson and Ray Holloway, two corrupt cops, strutted across the dimly illuminated parking lot of a downtown cafe. The atmosphere was heavy with anxiety as they made their way through the neighborhood. Find an easy victim, plant evidence, make an arrest, and then collect their share from the drug ring that they surreptitiously protected. This was their weekly ritual. They were unable to take their gaze off of the lone black guy who was sitting at the counter, drinking coffee while wearing a fitted suit. Not a fault. Grayson smiled and presented his badge to the audience. "We got a report of an armed robber. Looks a lot like you." The individual, Darius Locke, did not recoil in any way. He did little more than leave his cup on the table and raise an eyebrow. "You sure about that?" Holloway gave him a pat down and then slipped a bag of cocaine into his pocket when he was finished. "Oh, we're sure." Darius had a sly grin as the handcuffs were securely fastened. "Bad move, officers." A single encrypted message was delivered to Darius' phone. "Initiate protocol lockdown." This occurred before the squad vehicle had even departed the parking lot. After 60 seconds, an emergency alert was sent to each and every police vehicle in the district. Officers Grayson and Holloway are wanted for corruption. All units. Detectives Grayson and Holloway, upon sight, you'll be placed under arrest. During the first 90 seconds, the phone of the police chief rang. The director of the FBI was calling. "You have one of ours in custody," the speaker said. "If you do not release him immediately, we will demolish your whole department." A swarm of drones lit up the sky at the 2-minute mark, streaming live video from body cams showing Grayson and Holloway planting narcotics. This footage was aired to every news station in the city. The two detectives were the ones who were waiting for the SWAT teams when the cruiser arrived at the station. Darius was not the one who was waiting for them. Grayson made a lunge aimed at Darius. "Who the hell are you?" As officers from the federal government rushed in, Darius fixed the cuffs of his suit. "The man who just ended your careers." Although he seemed to be a spectator, Darius was really a federal prosecutor working undercover to establish a case against the corrupt drugs unit in the city. The arrest of him? To bring down the whole ring. The last piece of proof that was required. By the time daybreak arrived, 12 cops had been taken into jail. The mayor was being investigated, and Darius was enjoying a cup of coffee at the same cafe while smirking at the headline that was shown on his phone. The aftermath from Darius Locke's arrest sent shockwaves across the police department and beyond, just as the sun began to rise over the city. Both Grayson and Holloway were restrained in handcuffs in the same interrogation room, where they had broken a large number of suspects and arrested them. However, this time around, the roles were switched around. Darius entered the room, no longer acting as a hapless citizen. The door opened and swung open again. Now he wore the eye of a federal prosecutor who was holding all the cards, which was keen and calculated. You boys really thought you could shake me down? The heavy case file that Darius was throwing onto the table was met with a giggle from him. I've been tracking you for months. Holloway's face became pale as he recognized the names, dates, and bank records that were looking back at him. These records included every shady transaction, every payout, and every life that they had caused to be destroyed. Grayson growled and said, "You'll never be able to make it stick." The voice of Darius was sharp as he moved in closer. "Oh, we already have, before noon, following the discovery of evidence that connected him to the wrongdoing. The chief of police resigned. An emergency news conference was convened by the mayor, during which he denied any participation. Nonetheless, the FBI was already conducting investigations. The film of Grayson and Holloway smiling as they framed innocent individuals was broadcast by local news stations, which eventually led to demonstrations throughout the whole city. Darius, however, was not yet finished. While Darius was being transported to prison, he got a phone call from a mysterious someone who was only referred to as the warden. The voice replied, "You exposed the pawns," and it was a message. "But the kingpin is still out there." Laughing, Darius smiled. "Then let's finish this." After a month has passed, all of the members of the drugs unit were terminated. The accountability of the police force has been reformed via the introduction of new laws. How about Darius? He disappeared in the same stealthy manner in which he had come, leaving behind a city that was at last able to breathe freely. However, if you pay careful attention in the appropriate areas of the city, you will hear rumors that say, Locke is still out there in the world, and he is going to come for the rest of it. The citizens of the city believed that the storm had gone. The incidents that had been making headlines had subsided, the demonstrations had subsided, and the politicians had moved on to fresh controversies. Darius Locke, on the other hand, was only beginning his work at the time. Commissioner Alden Voss was seated as he counted piles of blood money deep inside the abandoned 8th Precinct building. This was a location that was so corrupt that even rats preferred to avoid it. He was the one who had been hiding behind his immaculate desk and had coordinated the whole sleazy enterprise. Grayson and Holloway were idiots, he mumbled to his enforcer, a huge ex-cop called Briggs. They were both just plain stupid. But this Locke problem, it ends tonight. Do you know what Voss did not know? By that time, Darius had already entered DOT. IT would eventually be discovered that the security video included implausible gaps. Namely, 3 minutes during which every camera experienced a glitch as Darius glided around the precinct like a ghost. Voss's safe was standing with its doors wide open as the lights began to flicker back on DOT. In addition, his ledger was missing. The contents of the book with a leather binding were. Every single sleazy judge, politician, and law enforcement officer that is currently on the payroll accounts that are located offshore. There is evidence that points to the person who ordered the attack on Darius's younger brother 2 years ago. At 3 minutes and 17 seconds, every major news organization got an anonymous upload. The record-keeping system Voss's voice may be heard commanding hits. The video from Briggs' body cam shows him killing a teenager who was not armed. As the sun rose, the National Guard began to arrive, and protesters besieged the headquarters of the police department. With a revolver in his hand and yelling about immunity agreements, Voss made his last confrontation in the evidence room. Following that, the lights shut off once again. When did they come back on the air? The only 2 items that remained were a smoldering service handgun belonging to Voss was found on the floor. A solitary playing card, the King of Spades, was attached to his breast, and a badge to identify him as a detective was also put there. The search for Darius was fruitless. He is allegedly constructing a case against the governor, according to some. Others have said that he is imparting his knowledge to a network of vigilantes in other cities. What happens, however, when a rookie officer in the precincts considers receiving money that is not legitimate? Those individuals recall the evening when the incorrect black guy entered the building. Then the whole dang system was detained and taken away in handcuffs. Jamal Carter, a rookie police officer, hesitated before accepting his first bribe, which was a crisp $500 cash that was handed over a calf counter. This occurred 6 months later, on a rainy night in November. When his fingertips came into contact with the money, the lights began to flicker. A voice as smooth as aged whiskey and as icy as a coroner's slab sounded from the booth behind him and said, "Put it back." Put it back. When Jamal turned around, he saw a guy wearing a trench coat the color of black. With his face obscured by the rain and the shadows, the card that was lying on the table was a king of spades. But how did you? When the ghost handed a picture of Jamal's twin sister across the table, it stated, "Your sister is currently attending medical school. You really want to make her visit you in prison?" During the time when Jamal was leaving the restaurant, the figure disappeared, leaving behind. Voss's fingerprints are now affixed to the banknote while it is marked. An incriminating phone that is laden with evidence with a choice after a year has passed. At the location where the 8th Precinct was once located, the newly elected Police Commissioner Carter presented a memorial to the public. The throng is filled with the reverberation of the carved words. The easiest person to fool is yourself. Jamal notices a familiar playing card hidden away in the wreath that is located somewhere behind the podium. A grin appears on his face, and he fingers the king of spades as if it were a secret. It was a metro vehicle at midnight. When the train begins to descend into darkness, the reflection of Darius Locke can be seen moving across the windows inside. Corruption is raging in another city, somewhere in the background. It is necessary for another monarch to be deposed elsewhere. An encrypted conversation is heard pinging on a forum on the dark web.